Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Aquarian Anarchy. I am Chad. He is Marcus. He is Nico. And in the co-pilot seat tonight is Scott Creighton. I had to do it. I had to steal your shtick there for a second. No, we appreciate everybody coming in, especially our special guests who are our fans and viewers who have
consistent.
come over from Scott's audience, as well as our consistent viewers who are here every week. We really appreciate you guys. We want to remind everybody while you are here to like, share, and subscribe. I'm going to throw our banner down to the bottom now so you can see all that stuff throughout the episode. Also, go to our Patreon and support us there. Become a patron at the $5 level. You get to join our private chat in Telegram, and we are really excited because this is somebody I've been following for quite a while, over a year, I think. Met Scott through Uncle Hotep, who has been consistently sharing your videos and things like that. And I really like the approach that you take with it. And that's we're going to get into all sorts of stuff, including that. But first, I just want to welcome you to the show and thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I enjoy it. I'm looking forward to this. I've been looking forward to this for a couple of weeks now. Thanks for having me on. Yeah,
same here. We're excited to have you. I'm going to get right into it. So, I gave you the little list of stuff we're going to go through because what I want to do is I want to evolve this to a point where we eventually just are shooting the shit and having a free form discussion. But I definitely want to, for the audience, to get a little bit of background of who you are, where you came from, and how you came to be the internet personality that you are as Beau's sidekick. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start off with just kind of how you got to so you live in Florida, right?
Yes.
Did you grow up in Florida, or did you what's your family background?
Born and raised, pretty standard, average. Born and raised Virginia.
Okay.
Went to college, couple years at JMU, VCU. Studied theater.
Okay.
Wanted to be an actor. Then I found out I couldn't stand being around actors.
I remember that now that you studied acting because you made that Van Jones video where you're talking about the Bengay and the eye trick and everything. Okay, yeah. All right, keep going. Sorry.
Ended up moving up to New York. Lived in Manhattan for 7 years. Never got around to auditioning for anything. I just worked the whole time I was there. I did construction for a year between colleges. So when I got back to theater in college at VCU, I was building sets and things. So I had some background in that. When I went to New York, I worked as a set builder and built sets for MSNBC, for Les Mis, stuff like that. Came back from New York in '99, late '99, went to work making a couple of films as a carpenter. Made a TV show as a carpenter. Then I came down to Florida. Been here about going on 18 years now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
2002. And I was working as a draftsman and a carpenter in different places. Opened up my own business in 2005, doing project management and drafting. Came home from Atlanta one day from a job I was working on for the W Hotel for a company called Kusarachia, installing a water fountain in the middle of this bar. This big old hanging thing with a bunch of bowls and water drips down. Hit the ground, woke up a couple of days later in the hospital.
Oh, shit.
Had pulmonary embolism from a DVT in my leg from flying. And that put me out for a while. And had 2 more since then, and here we are. Wow. Basically, that's not a very exciting story. How I got to doing what I'm doing. A friend of mine back in about 2005, Jessica, next door neighbor, had a conversation with me about 9/11. Her opinion was that of somebody from the community college she was going to. gave her some information. She thought there might be something up with the story other than what was told to us.
Mm-hmm.
I was indignant, and I blew her theory apart, all the little holes in it, picked it apart. I felt bad about that, lost a friend. So I decided I was going to take 9 months, and I was going to learn as much as I could about it so I could put an end to this whole conspiracy theory thing about 9/11 being an inside job. And I did. I spent 9 months while I was doing drafting and trying to work while I was still sick. But after 9 months of research, I had an epiphany.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me 9 months because I didn't want to think about that in that way.
Mm-hmm.
But I had an epiphany. And ever since then, I've been kind of on this path, you know. But that's really what set me on this.
Interesting.
So what was the conclusions you came to about 9/11?
Okay, we'll see if we can get YouTube to shut us down in the first 10 minutes.
Yes,
10 minutes is all we got.
Welcome to Agrarian Anarchy.
He already told us.
Honestly,
he had an
you really
epiphany.
want me to say this?
It's just leave it there, Marcus. Stamp.
Let me just say it. Put it this way. I started off looking at things like popular mechanics. If you remember back in those days, they did that big thing, and the press was like, "Oh, look, popular mechanics," and they showed a diagram of the tube within a tube design of the trade centers. No wonder it fell apart. It was just a hollow tube in the middle of another hollow tube, so no wonder it fell apart and collapsed completely. Of course, I did structural drawings. I did work for engineers. Even at one point in time in Lynchburg, Virginia, I actually hung steel for a little while. I knew it wasn't a tube within a tube, and I wondered why they would do that. Why would they put that kind of information out there? You know, the conclusions I came to be honest, I don't know who did it. I have theories. Everybody has theories. Who profited from it? Who benefits? But I'll tell you right now.
Shit covered up.
I'll tell you right now. Steel and concrete buildings have never done that prior to 9/11. They never did that after 9/11. And even though NIST finally admitted that yes, Building 7 did fall at free fall acceleration, which is physically impossible, but it did, and they admitted it. They said that the reason was because of thermal expansion. So you would imagine all of those buildings that are sitting around, not only in New York, but also Chicago, Atlanta, everywhere else, that were designed without this new problem, thermal expansion, taken into consideration. You would think that they would have all this kind of redesign and stuff because they've got a serious problem. They changed nothing. Building codes did not change. Nothing changed. It never happened before. It never happened since. So obviously there's something else going on at play here. Unless you think that maybe the laws of physics just stopped on September 11th.
Just pretended that they didn't exist that
They
day.
didn't exist. Right.
Yeah, for me, my opinion has always been, and there's an echo.
Why is it only you, Marcus?
I don't
I
know.
don't understand.
Am I echoing?
Yeah.
You're echoing too.
Is it my speakers?
It might be.
Possibly.
Possible.
I'm going to turn my speakers off. You talk for a second. If it's the echo, I can go to the headphones.
Okay.
So go ahead and talk, and if the echo stops and I turn my speakers off, let me know.
Okay,
check.
can you hear? I think it's your.
Yeah, it is.
I think it's your
Dang
speakers.
it.
Was that it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. Hopefully you'll still be able to hear and talk through your microphone once we fix this. All right, folks, just pause. I'm going to take
You want
this
me to go to
moment.
the headset real quick?
Yeah, if you don't mind,
Yes,
I think
please.
it'd be.
Is it going to tell me, like, remember before when I first signed up, this is the first time using this system. It's
Yeah.
going to tell me to check my microphone and should I
So at
go
the
out
bottom,
and come back?
No, you're fine. At the bottom, there's a little gear that says cam/mic.
Okay,
You'll click on that, and then you'll just select your new setup, your new headphones.
So I can leave this mic on and just use these headphones.
Yeah, I think so. You should be able to. If not,
Good,
we'll
because I look just like the rest of the guys.
right.
Right
With our
now, you know why we got them.
I was
yeah,
I was
right.
left out for so long. I was left out in headphone-less for so long.
Right.
So I just
Oh,
got
wait
an
a minute.
approved.
I might not have to do that at all. Hang on a second. Let me try.
Oh, you can just plug into your computer speakers.
Can you hear us?
I
Hang
hear
on a
you.
second.
Hey, and
no
I don't,
echo.
no
No
echo
echo.
either. Do you hear
See,
us?
so it's headphones.
I can hear you just. I can hear you just fine.
All
There's
right,
no echo.
we are
No
Gucci.
echo.
Nope, I don't
Nope.
think so. I think we're good.
Nope.
Perfect.
Sorry about that, guys. Sorry.
Yeah, go
That's
ahead,
okay.
Marcus.
So my opinion has always been with 9/11 and those, and frankly, many of the stories that the goobers in charge like to tell us is that I don't know what happened on 9/11. I just know whatever the hell they're telling us in what happened on 9/11.
Right. And then it's always about what are the ripple effects, just like what's going on now. Like what are the other strategic objectives that event or that thing is allowing to be put into place, and that's what you talked about that on your video today, Scott. That it was that was very very interesting and eye opening. So I'm curious. Before we get into more of the little detailed discussions about those things, because I definitely want to probe all of that stuff. I want to kind of understand like your worldview. I know we when we were talking before, you're like, am I going to be the only lefty in this conversation? And I talked about like the whole like I kind of reject the whole left right paradigm. I'm more interested in like, okay, so what's your take on certain specific either issues or different instruments or anything like that. So where would you put yourself, say, on like the let's just use the typical vernacular of the left, right, or Republican, Democrat, or independent, or whatever. Where did you start, and where did you kind of evolve to now, if you had to put a name on it?
Well, I'm certainly independent now. In 2000, I watched Al Gore bring down the gavel on 56 members of the Black Caucus, and all they wanted was one senator to sign the thing to stop Dick Cheney and George W. Bush from becoming president after what happened, and 56,000 African Americans were disenfranchised from their right to vote in Florida. And Al Gore systematically brought down the gavel one after the other and got them out of the way so they could move on with verifying the election results. That put a bunch of neocons in charge, who, by the way, exactly 1 year to the date before September 11th, published something called the Rebuilding America's Defenses Plan, which is a white paper put out by American Enterprise Institute and the neocons. But aside from that, so when I saw that, I realized there's just one party. It's not a two-party system. There's one party. And they all work together with each other. It's like I refer to it like the WWE. You got the heels, you got the faces, they're always fighting.
Yes.
And ironically, back in 2016, I kept saying I couldn't believe it. Donald Trump is going to be the next president. And then I said, that makes perfect sense because he's in the actual WWE Hall of Fame, isn't he?
Yeah, right, for sure.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I am with that. If you ask my political leanings, put it this way. I'm left to Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, to me, is a sheepdog. He never intended to win. He obviously is people say he's a sellout. He's not a sellout. He's doing exactly what he's doing exactly what he was supposed to do. I mean, Michael Parente figured that stuff out back in 1998 when Bernie Sanders was all about, regime changing and breaking up the country named Yugoslavia. And he completely supported that. He's never been what he pretends to be. I guess I'm kind of in the Eugene Debs model in terms of I guess I'm a throwback leftist. Okay. Which means I'm not socialist. I'm not communist. I'm a capitalist, but I'm a throwback capitalist. back to the days when this country created the first middle class, and a throwback Democrat back in the days when the Democrats cared about the working people and the blue collar people of this country. You know, they don't care now. Back in the day when they questioned and didn't fucking, pardon my language, trust the Central Intelligence Agency and the Federal Bureau of Investigations, much less worship them like they do now.
Right.
So I'm kind of a throwback.
When did you see the bigger change? I mean, you did say with Al Gore, you know, and dropping the gavel, but like, where did you like really start to see the separation of them stop caring about the people?
It's a good question. That opened my eyes, and that stopped me from voting Democrat. I haven't voted Democrat since then. That opened my eyes. Then it took a little while for me to really understand what their game was, and I had to go back and the more I learned about the Clintons, the more I learned about Barack Obama. Barack Obama really, the research I did going into and the writing I did about Barack Obama and as his ascension from 2004 at the convention to 2008, I think it was, and was it 2008, his election?
Yeah. 08 election.
That really opened my eyes to see just how corrupt the Democratic Party was. But again, it's not just the Democratic Party; it's both. You know, and now you could even see it's the Green Party as well. They're almost as bad as the Democrats
and the Libertarian Party,
and the Libertarian Party. Yeah, yeah.
For sure. And to talk about the whole left-right thing, you know, I'm with Chad. I don't identify, if you will, as a left-right, pink, purple, green. I don't care. All that is nonsense because I'm not concerned about left and right. I'm concerned about right and wrong. And for me, both the left and the right, as we know them today, are just a divide and conquer strategy to keep the two parties separated. And those two parties are them, what Thomas Paine would have called the no abilities, and us. Those are the two parties that function in this country. And they try to keep their power in their hands and try to keep the power out of our hands. If I'm a leftist, I'm an Emma Goldman leftist. And so you probably aren't alone in this group of being right, left, if you're going to call it that. Now, I would also be economically what would probably be considered right, because I believe that you shouldn't force people to do anything, and that certainly communities can come together and agree on things and make decisions, but ultimately force is wrong. So you're not alone, is what I'm trying to say.
I feel that. I think that. I mean, I'm sorry to interject, but I haven't been a part of this, you know, political game for so long. I'm still wet behind the ears. I'm super young, and I wouldn't like say, when I was younger, I'd be like, I was told to be democratic in my views because that's just how the cookie crumbled. And then the more and more I understood politics, I was more conservative with my money, but I break it down to like etymological, or however you say that word. I break down the word. So it's like, I'm not a communist, but I believe in community. You know, I am not a socialist, but I believe in the social circle, the society that we believe or that we live in. So there's there's attributes from those elements that I personally believe that we can attribute to ourselves and to our groups of communities to make things a lot easier than just saying, oh, I'm full gung-ho leftist and I'm a left-leaning person and this is how I believe things should go. Right. I think it's just like a system that should just be in place instead of, you know, one side or the other.
I see what you're saying, and that makes perfect sense. It's they would like us, and like Marcus said, they would like us to be at each other. The last 4 years are a fine example. You know, everything is either evil Putin or evil Trump, and everything that bad has happened is one of those two or a combination of those two. So everything's, you know, and of course on the right, it's all AOC, it's all Nancy Pelosi, it's all Hillary Clinton. Well, Hillary Clinton a little less now than it was, but she's still in the mix, I guess. Mm-hmm. but it's rarely like that in reality. There's a gray area, and this is from what you told me, Chad, in the DMs. That's exactly what I think you're looking to get at today with today's discussion. Is we can talk about that gray area and find the things that we agree on, and understand that there's going to be things that we're not going to agree on, but we can still work together as Nico said, as a society, as a community. Right. We can still come together. And like Marcus said, that is exactly what they don't want to see happen.
Yeah, I mean that was the biggest reason why. And when I first reached out to you about doing this with you, you remember like what I said was like, we might not agree on everything, but we can both agree on this, that your voice needs to be amplified, because I feel like the more there are people, because there's so much stuff that I appreciate that you expose, that you open my eyes to, because I don't have time to like dig into all this stuff, every bit of it every day. Like I dig into
all I got is time.
No, but it's not. I'm not saying that. I'm saying like you dig into the stuff that really strikes your interest. I dig into the stuff that strikes mine, Marcus his, Nico his, and when we all come together and we're able to share that information and share those perspectives, it helps us all to understand the world a little bit better, know what to be on the lookout for, and also know how we can work together to solve it, or to at least protect ourselves from it and insulate ourselves a little bit from it.
If you remember the Republican primary process, one of the things that intrigued me with Donald Trump, even though I looked at it, I was like, oh my God. But still, I said the same thing about, I call him Sneaky Uncle Slow Joe Biden, because he's the guy, he's the uncle you don't want to leave with your kids. You know, he's a sneaky uncle. No, don't.
Right.
But the thing that I liked about Trump back in those days was he was populist. He was a populist. And so was Bernie Sanders. And if you look at what really happened in the lesson and why they got terrified in 2016 when Trump won. They could rig, they could, whatever, the election in the primary, much easier than the general election. And so, of course, Bernie Sanders won the primary. For sure. A populist won on the left and a populist one on the right. That scared the living bejesus out of them. Because if your viewers know anything about the history of the war on populism, the recent history of the war on populism, if they don't, please have a look, Google it, whatever search engine you use, pull it up and look. That is the biggest problem. The biggest problem is the fact that there's populism on the left, populism on the right. And if those two merge, then there's no way they're going to be able to even pretend anymore in terms of this election system that we have, that they can maintain control. So 2016 scared them. But I really like the fact that Donald Trump, in some of his speeches, talked about the fact that, you know, look at the Bernie Sanders people.
Right.
He said they believe in a lot of the same things we believe in. They're very similar to us. That terrifies them. That scares them.
And let's give credit where credit's due. A lot of that really began with Ron Paul in 2008. That building and caring about and for before him, Ralph Nader, caring about the people and caring about your communities. Those movements that were started long before, but I agree with you. For the first time in electoral politics, you had both sides with a very popular person who appealed to the masses, if you will, for sure. And Ron Paul
had a very similar message,
right? And
very similar message.
What Ron Paul brought to the table was the idea that, yes, they can rob us of a real vote, but if you have enough people showing up and you have enough people, then they can't rob it as easily.
Right.
Well, excuse me. I'm sorry. I should hit the mute button. No, next time.
No, you're good. You're good.
I'm glad you brought that up. I don't want to really jump on that or harp on that, because we know YouTube will pull the plug. But I wanted to put out some information there for your viewers and for yourselves if you have a chance. There's an outstanding example of what we're talking about, what Ron Paul was talking about, Marcus. And you go and look up 2010 South Carolina Senate primary, Alvin Green. Please go look that up. I wrote a number of articles about this, and I actually watched this hearing that took place in the Democratic Party in South Carolina. Please go have a look at this, because this, to your question before, Nico, this 2010 example of how our political system structure works, proving that it's a one-party system, more than anything else that you can look at. The Democrats deliberately threw the nomination process of this guy, Alvin Green, who was he was on national television acting like he was a complete idiot. He was like, no, someone went and knocked on his door after he did this thing where he was trying to pick up some college student, being a African-American, trying to pick up this white college student, knowing he was going to get arrested for it, doing this disgusting things. All of this while he was a candidate to be a senator, right? They did all of that in an effort to make sure that a progressive populist Democrat in the Senate would lose his seat, because Alvin Green became the nominee. And of course, at that point, he goes to the general election and the Republican wins because this guy is just ridiculous. The fact about Alvin Green is this. Even though at one point in time that he was being indicted for this little stunt he did in the University of South Carolina, at one point in time, they asked him about the indictment. He goes, indictment? I don't know what that means. He's literally doing it like that, right? He had no website. He had no campaign. He didn't give any speeches. He didn't do anything. But he won, supposedly, the primary.
Right. Very
funny the way they did that. But he won the primary. Alvin Green acted like he didn't know what the word indictment meant. Do you know where he came from before he went back to South Carolina and decided to run for the U.S. Senate out of the blue? Do you know what he was doing? He was military intelligence in Korea.
Shock.
There we go.
Do you know where he went to college? He went to college. He studied political science.
Columbia or something?
No, graduated with honors. He was a Gamecock, University of South Carolina.
Oh, South Carolina. Okay.
The same place he went and met that girl at the computer center and showed her dirty pictures and said, hey, you want to do that? In order to get arrested. He was military intelligence in South Korea. He got to leave. He came down here. He did that whole routine. It worked. The Republican ends up being nominated, getting the seat. I think it's Jim DeMint. And then he ends up going back to work in military intelligence.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Yeah, the thing is,
it's a fascinating story, Nika. It's a fascinating story. Yeah.
Sounds like it. The thing is, I think you're right in the fact that they don't want populist ideas spread. I think that is the case, but I think it's actually a little more generalized than that. They don't want people that aren't sucking on the tit of right. Whatever the hell they tell them to. I don't know that I would. I don't know that I would call Cynthia McKinney a populist, because they damn sure ran her out of office. And do you know who Cynthia McKinney is?
Oh, I had a huge crush. I had a huge crush on her for a long time.
You're gonna have to break that down for the young lad over here.
Okay, Cynthia McKinney was a black congressman from Georgia. She's actually a friend of mine. And Cynthia, she did not give a shit at all about what, like, they said, you've got to sign this paperwork to, and she was a congressman from Georgia. You've got to sign this paperwork saying that you will not oppose Israel in any way. And she said, "Gefick and she was not playing that game at all. And when the day after, because the day before 9/11, Rumsfeld came in and said, "Oops, we lost so many $1 billion.
Yeah,
Oops,
$3 trillion or something.
right, right,
$2 trillion.
And then 9/11 happened, and then the next day,
trillion.
Was it 21? I couldn't remember. It was 2.1. I had the decimal.
$21
I had the decimal in the wrong place. 2. Or I was thinking 2.1. It was 21.
I knew it was a lot. So Rumsfeld, oops, we lost $21 trillion. Oops. And then the next day, 9/11 happens.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next day, Cynthia McKinney said, "Where's the motherfucking money?" And she did not hesitate. She did not stop. And that's what they're afraid of. Yes.
Cynthia McKinney was extremely courageous. Her, Dennis Kucinich, they got rid of him much for one of the same reasons. But Cynthia McKinney I had a lot of respect for Cynthia McKinney. Just to give you a little more clarity on the 21 trillion, they had known about the 21 trillion missing dollars from the Pentagon budget for several months prior to that. They put one of their neocons in charge of the operation to look for it. They got a whole bunch of accountants, and some were government, some were outside businesses. They brought them in. They put them in several offices. Swear to God, look it up. You think I'm crazy? You think I'm making this up? The one guy who was not there that day on September 11th, when the Pentagon was hit, was the neocon in charge. He wasn't there yet. And the plane did a 290-degree loop all around the Pentagon when it could have just gone straight into the Pentagon. So we could hit that office directly. The one office that was hit by the plane at the Pentagon was the office where they were looking for the $21 trillion, and they had all the records, and they were all destroyed.
Hey,
that's crazy.
Hey, did you hear the Fed went down?
That Nico, is a fact.
Yeah. And just to catch you up, I don't know if you followed Cynthia. Cynthia's now one of us. She's an anarchist. She came out as an anarchist at Anarcho-Polko 2 years ago on stage with Adam Kokesh. I had the pleasure of meeting Cynthia at the Libertarian National Convention in 2018 in New Orleans. She is a wonderful person. I helped schedule her on a couple of events that she did herself. She is a very nice person. And what brought her to what we would call anarchism was she followed that rabbit hole all the way down and found out that those people in charge are corrupt as shit. And it doesn't matter if they run a corporation or they run a government. Power corrupts absolutely.
Another little quick side note about Cynthia. Brilliant woman, ended up getting her doctorate degree after she leaves Congress. She was a 2-term, I believe, congressperson for the state of Georgia, African American. She tried with her doctorate to get a job teaching in the United States on a university level. Do you know how corrupt the universities are now? Because she was tainted by her opinions and about her questions about her behavior when she was in Congress. Not a single one of them, not even historically black colleges, would offer her a job. She had to go to Thailand or Indonesia. Indonesia,
Bangladesh.
Indonesia. I think. She had to go to Bangladesh to get a job. Unbelievable what they did to her. Unbelievable, immoral what they did to her. It's disgusting. But I'm glad she's doing well.
She is. Last track I had of her, and I just talked to her here and there. She helped Jesse Ventura recently. He was running for president briefly as well. Yeah.
A Green Party or something like that. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. He was only on the ballot in a couple of states, but yeah.
Not Green Party. That's right.
No, it wasn't Green Party. It was something else. But no, I know he was in Alaska. But anyhow, well, Chad, you want to continue down your road?
Yeah. Well, so we talked about kind of like where you would place yourself on the spectrum of like, I don't know, worldview and political thought, everything. Yeah. All right. The one party system. Yeah. Very well explained there. But what would you say? Like, what are some of the influences that got you to where you are? Like, were there any influences, or was it just you doing your own research and just kind of like having some of these little epiphanies?
Howard Zinn obviously. I mentioned Michael Parente in the past. You had mentioned Ralph Nader. I brought up people like Eugene Debs. To some degree, JFK, but I'm not one of these people on the left, the so-called left, who idolize him. I see him for what he was and what he did. But I do know also why he's gone, why they had to check him out when they had to check him out. And it had nothing to do with the Russians, like what's his face is James Woolsey's trying to say now. Oh my God, it was the Russians who got him killed. Had nothing to do with the Russians, unless of course you think Lyndon Baines Johnson was a Russian.
That shit was hilarious though when they came out. They were like, hey, look! After all this time, we have some breaking news.
Breaking news.
Did it?
It was the Russians.
Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like,
and that's James Woolsey, a pure neocon, saying that it was the Russians who did it. Yeah. Okay.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but they're all neocons, man. It don't matter. You got this left flavored neocon. You got this, you know. You
and Jimmy Dore was on Tucker Carlson just the other day, or last week, saying the same thing. And these Democrats right now, the ones who are in the White House, the ones who are in control, they're just pure neocons. But what he misses the point. He misses the point. The neocons and the left, even back when in the 80s and the 90s, they're all in the same boat even back then. They were all on the same team even back then. A guy penned the phrase the Washington Consensus, and he was talking about this one-party system. They have neocons, and people say, well, you have neocons and neolibs, but actually neoliberals is an economic ideology and not new liberal party. It's an economic ideology. What you have is the neocons and the New Dems. They literally have a group called the New Dems, and rather than the New Dems being ostracized and kicked to the curb in the 80s and the 90s and 2000s, with the money and with Nancy Pelosi being in charge and being in charge of where the lobbyists go and who the lobbyists give their money to, the New Dems became the Democratic Party of America. So yeah, they are neoconservative in their outlook, but they're all neoliberals. Every single one of them. Neocons are neoliberals. New Dems are neoliberals. It's their economic ideology and their worldview that makes them problematic.
For sure. And all of it is based in violence. And as an anarchist, that's what we push aside. We don't believe that you have to have violence to run a society. You don't have to have coercion. You don't have to have force. We believe that violence is actually a bad thing. And that the only way that you can peacefully live together is voluntarily. And when you start forcing your will on other people, you wind up with these ass clowns bombing brown people all over the damn world and stealing half your income from your wallet. And if you don't think, so to catch what would be left and right, and also enslaving people of color, enslaving people that are white like me. They want slavery, they want violence, and they want all of your income. And that's every one of them.
Well, and the other thing is too, like what Scott was talking about today on his stream about this this weird juxtaposition of you have to get this thing and have a passport for it so that you can prove that you got it, except that it doesn't matter if you have it because you still have to wear 17 masks and all this other shit. It's all about. And if you go back to Hillary Care and then Obamacare, it's the same sort of rollouts of all these things where the biggest part of it is forcing you to buy something that you may or may not have wanted to buy and collecting all your data. That's the thing. When you said that data is the new gold, it's damn, that's dead on right there. Because that's what it is. It's consuming and consolidating all this data and metadata and then synthesizing it into marketing and pattern recognition and all these other different things so they can figure out how they using these algorithms to figure out how they can put shit in front of you that makes you more susceptible to the next thing that they're going to want you to buy or adopt as a policy or whatever the case may be.
Or politician. They
or a politician. Exactly.
Question, Scott. How do you view today's political climate. I'm not like, I don't really ingest your pause. I don't really like view your information. I don't view your information. So it's like this is a very, very new experience for me. So like, how do you view this political climate as it is now?
Political climate as they want us to view it, or political climate as it really is?
Through you. I don't care about other people. I'm sick of other people. I want to hear your point of view.
I think people think that it's toxic and it's bad because they're told it's toxic and it's bad, and that's the only thing that YouTube will allow you to hear, and it's the only thing that Twitter will not ban you from. I think it's less so. The more people I talk to in the real world, the more I realize that my views, even though I am I'm a conspiracy theorist, I'm a conspiracy realist, but the more I realize that these aren't fringe views. They say Scott's fringe, he says this, Scott's fringe, he says that, or you guys are fringe because you say this and say that. The more people you talk to, the more you realize, no, we're not. And they're from the right and they're from the left. You know, I mean, I talk to people throughout the week, from construction workers to legal people, lawyers. We're not that far apart in terms of our political views. Like I said before, we talked about, Nico, in terms of in 2016, and what they were really scared of was going to happen in 2020 was this rise of populism. And it's not just in the United States.
Yeah.
Brexit, for example. Look at all these countries. Right. Look at all the Yellow Vest movement, for example.
Yep.
Hong Kong.
Look at all these countries. Hong Kong. Well, Hong Kong is nah.
Yeah.
But the rise of populism, and you have to look at the definition of populism. We're not talking about, they want you to think that populism is white supremacy. They want you to think that populism means nationalism and closing That's not what populism means. The simple definition of populism, again, you can just look it up, means running a government for the benefit of the general population, as opposed to running it for the benefit of the elite at the very top.
The oligarchy.
The oligarchy. That's populism. And that is what is on the rise. So in terms of what do I see happening on the ground in terms of politics in this country, I see us coming together, even though they're trying as best as they can, which is why they have to censor so much. They can't argue with us. They can't put a better debate forward. So all they can do is silence one side of it and say that side is bad, that side is white supremacist, and that side is Nazi, that side is whatever. They can't just let the debate happen and let people make their own decisions, because they know they'll make the decision that they don't want. So the more they push on us, the more censorship there is, the more of that happens with social media and with YouTube, the better I feel in a way, because I know that means we're winning. They wouldn't be doing it if we weren't.
Well, one of the things
that answer your
really
question, Nico?
Yeah, no, that does.
Okay.
One of the things that really stuck out with me that you said about, it was almost a year ago, it was like probably in March or April or something like that, when you talked about this 2 weeks to slow the spread thing and like shutting down schools and all that stuff, was you said, and this, like, I'll never forget this, because it hit me in a way that I was like, oh, goddamn, he may be onto something here. You said they're not doing this to protect us. They're doing this to protect their asset.
Yes. Because
if you think about what you were saying, there was already a movement underfoot where people were starting to come together, and people were I was having conversations with my friends who were like Bernie supporters, and we were talking about, we were in agreement on so much stuff. It was just, they liked Bernie and I liked the libertarian candidate, or maybe not the libertarian candidate, but like the third person who didn't win the libertarian nomination, but we were on the same page in terms, and that's why I wanted to get you and have this conversation where, instead of assuming things about your worldview because of left, right, or any of these other different monikers that get thrown at people, but to actually ask the questions like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Is because as we started to come together, look what they did. They locked us all in our homes, made us all cover our faces, and made us snitch on. Well, I say us, made people snitch on each other if they
and
were,
then rewarded kids who snitched on their father. Right,
yes.
made them TV stars.
Exactly,
and gave them college degrees. Oh, we're going to give you a college education because you snitched on daddy. Yeah,
yes, exactly.
But I've also said that I think they've gone too far. John Locke said that there is nothing that brings people into seditious commotion but oppression, and the more they oppress us, the more we are going to rebel. That is what's going to happen. Where I would differ with what you're saying about populism, though I agree largely, where I would differ is I think it is just a step along the way. I think that there is a mass awakening in the world, and I think that people like Chad, Nico, and I, and frankly, people like Larkin Rose or Adam Kokesh or people like that are ahead of the game. People are starting to realize, in my mind, that we don't need these outdated control systems anymore. We have enough self-control and community control to where we could handle this at the county level. We could do this and still have the same functions. Chad bought me a book by Walter Block about how do we privatize the roads. And in that, one of the things that, and I've begun reading it, and one of the things that Block points out is that these controls that we have in place from Washington, D.C., instead of your local neighborhood, are actually stifling innovation. We would have better ways of doing things if these idiots that have never touched a road before in their life weren't making rules, but your guy down the road for instance, in say in Miami for you, might have done this all his life. And he should be in charge of that. We have that ability to innovate, and we have the technology to do it efficiently. And so I think that populism is simply just one step. And now they want to cut it because they don't want to lose this shit completely. But they want to cut it there. They don't want that to take over, because once you get to populism, I think it's a hop and a skip and a jump to a voluntarist society.
Well, I don't want to get into a debate in terms of what's best in terms of privatizing government and not privatizing certain aspects of government. I don't want to get into that debate. But I will give you, Marcus, an example to consider. Back in, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure you know the case better than I do in terms of the dates. But if I am correct, you might have a little inside information into the funeral home business, the funeral director business.
Just a little bit.
Okay, little bit. And of course, I defer to you in terms of your expertise on that. But I'll give you a little example of what happens sometimes when things are privatized and left alone, when there's no regulation. You probably are starting to get a grasp on where I'm going with this. Back about 10 years ago, I think it was in Georgia, correct me if I'm wrong, there was a funeral director and a service that was
cremating bodies and
cremating bodies.
Them out the back.
And they were dumping them in the back. And eventually the smell got so bad that somebody finally came along. There's supposed to be regulation and somebody overseeing this. What this director did, because he was greasing the palms and there was no oversight, he was able to put cat litter in urns. He would get urns from China for $5. He would sell them to these people who were bereaved for $800, $900. And then he would put ashes from his own hardwood stove fireplace in the urn.
And he just mixed stuff together too.
Toss bodies, right, and toss bodies in the back. And I remember seeing helicopters shoot down. Let me finish this real quick, and this is going to wrap it up. The helicopter shoots down from the news, and the news gets a hold of it, and the invisible hand gets in once somebody screws up so bad with this free market. But they shoot down, and you saw 90 or so people in this vast backyard area. and you saw all of these people out in the street, family members, who thought they had taken care of their loved ones and who had not. And now their loved ones were in a mass grave in the back of this junkyard, basically. And I think 100 and something, 130 something bodies, a lot, were dug out. Who was out there digging those people up, finding who they were, doing the DNA on the bones, sorting them out, putting them together, and then finally giving them to the families for their rest?
The real answer to that.
Let me finish.
Okay.
It was government officials. Sometimes regulation is good, and sometimes the work that government does, not all. I certainly do not support what we do overseas. I don't support what we do here to people. A lot of government's bad. But sometimes it works for the best in the betterment of society. Those 170, 180 families finally got to put to rest for real the remains of their loved ones.
Sure, but I also think that, and again, I'm not trying to debate.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
And I'm not trying to debate, but I do want to point a couple of things out. One, the people that generally do that, sure, you'll have an overseer that comes in. I've never participated in like a plane wreck or anything that sort of major emergency that comes in. But what they generally do, because I had to get the training and the certification to do it, what they generally do is they'll have one or two people, usually from the federal government and then somebody from the state, and they usually have at least a representative from the county. But the vast majority, because it can take as much as 150 to 200 people to clean up a plane wreck, for instance, the vast majority of those people come from the local communities, usually from the surrounding funeral homes and those kinds of areas. So it's private people that are actually doing it. That's number one. Number two, I want to make it clear, we call ourselves anarchists. We're not opposed to government. I know that doesn't make sense to people. We're not because they assume that we don't like government. We don't like force. We don't like rulers. We don't like kings. We don't like people who have absolute authority over us because we own ourselves. We're not slaves. If a community wants to come together voluntarily and show some and collectively do things and be a government like Locke would have said, put them in charge. We don't have a thing wrong with that, but that's okay. What we have a problem with is being ruled over and being slaves.
Okay, I don't think any human being anywhere would say, "Well, I want to sign up for being ruled over and being a slave."
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's pretty broad definition of what you believe in. I think that for the most part, I could say easily, no, I'm not signing. If there's two lines, one line says be a slave, the other line says you're not going to be a slave. I'm going to be in the really long line. Okay.
Right. Welcome to being an anarch. You can call yourself a leftist. Yeah. You can call yourself whatever you want. You own yourself.
So the way that this kind of hits for me is that I try to draw the distinction of like, all right, so in an ideal world where like we could find some angelic beings that aren't corruptible, can't get paid under the table, and do things on the sly or anything like that, then yes. What's that?
I got one.
Oh, there he is. Hey, my man. Yep. What's up, Beau? You doing all right?
What's up?
Oh,
he can't hear you.
Oh, he can't hear me. Oh, the headphones. That's right. Oh, shoot, I can't. Damn, that ruins my plan. I was going to tell him
I had to work the bow grift in. Sorry.
I was going to tell him to go eat your jacket again. And now I can't do it because you have the damn headphones on. Shit.
I only got one button left. Come on.
So let's assume that we have this group of folks, group of beings that are incorruptible and who are all benevolent, and we can put them in charge. Then I'm totally okay with that. My issue is that for every story that there is of something like that there's also those counter stories where the person who is like this guy who was running this funeral home and was defrauding these families that dude is like a politician. That dude's working for the government, or he's in cahoots with the government. He's got somebody in the government help. And so like what we're trying to do is trying to develop a consciousness, I guess, where we are trying to get people to recognize their own self-ownership and to assert it as best they can. Because I think one of the issues that happens to a lot of folks is that we tend to, if we believe in government in the way that we have believed in it from the way we're taught in schools where we're indoctrinated, that it's all these things that we're told it is, when we actually find out that it's actually, like, in a lot of cases, just purely for, by, and of the oligarchy. It's like, it ain't by us, it ain't for us, and it's not of us. It's somehow like these other folks designed it and have like made it benefit them at our expense. When I look at it that way, I think, okay, what is a way that we can get people to stop believing and trusting that, oh, well, that can't happen because that's illegal. Well, no, because like even in these instances where there's laws against that shit, and you're not supposed to do that stuff, it doesn't stop people from doing it. The only thing that stops them is when the public says, hey, what the fuck? How did he get away with that? And then there's enough of an uproar to actually have something done about it. Because even when we have some of these things where there's something that's clearly illegal and that's clearly wrong and immoral, it gets brushed under the rug unless there's enough of a public outroar where it hits the wallets of the people who matter.
I think that's a good point. I think that as a fine example, I can give you right now of two different situations, and it'll tell you where we were and where we are. And that's a guy by the name of Sneaky Uncle Slojo, or Joe Biden. Joe Biden, back in 1988, tried to run for president. Mm-hmm. Turned out he was a liar, was caught lying, and a plagiarist. Yeah. Do you know what he had to do in 1988?
Probably nothing.
He had nothing. He had to drop out. He dropped out.
Oh, well, drop out. Yeah, but he
dropped out because that was a big scandal. In 1988, the people of the United States of America weren't going to vote for a known liar and plagiarist. He dropped out. Fast forward to 2020.
Anybody but Trump. That's all that matters.
Fast forward to 2020. Mm-hmm. This man is elected, and people like myself are going, are you kidding me? He wasn't good enough in 1988. All he's done since then is a crime bill. All he's since then is helped write the Patriot Act. All he's done since then is promote every single war of aggression that we've had since then, and continued to lie and continue talking about things about some dude pulling a knife and he whipped out a chain on Corn Pop. All he's done is continue to lie and touch children inappropriately, and they elect him.
He loves
him
on his lap.
Everybody's got short-term memory when it comes to, like, when they see Bad Monster, they forgot how they got into the whole situation in the first place. Right. So,
yeah,
as bad as Trump, as bad as Biden is, we're going to take. We still don't want Trump, and I'm sure there's some element of that. But the other part of that is this, you have to look at it like this. You get the government you deserve sometimes. I don't know who said that first, but that's a very true story. Yeah. That's a very true statement. You get the government you deserve. What has happened to the American population since 1988 to 2020? I'm willing to say and go out on a limb here that it hasn't been a change necessarily for the better.
Mm-hmm. No,
overall.
I would add, and I want to use a quote that I enjoy from Emma Goldman that's very similar, and she said that society gets the criminals that they deserve, and frankly, those are the same statement. But your point is well made that things have progressively over the last roughly 20 years gotten worse. I can't tell you how, I can't tell you how many times I've told my wife, I wasn't a huge fan of Ronald Reagan, but I sure would love to go back to him right now. I sure would love to go back to the 1980s when I didn't have to work, when my parents just let me run crazy through the streets and did not care what I was doing, because I'd come home at dark and I'd be okay because the neighbors look after me. And what I believe has happened, and I personally believe that it has happened intentionally, is that they have divided us so badly. Because the thing that government can't have, or for that matter, corporations can't have, is people working collectively. They can't have people who live in your neighborhood getting together and making a new lawnmower. They can't have people getting together and taking care of themselves. Now, you got to have a police force that'll come in and kill your black people, but you have to have those things so that the government is can control. Because make no question about it, that government controls every aspect of the control structure that is out there, whether that's business, whether that's the enforcement class, whether that's warfare, whether that's the economy. They're in charge of all of that crap. And so what we've done is we have ceded our responsibility in our communities to a band of criminals.
Well, I'd agree with that. And that's outwardly, that's the first level that you see. But let me ask you a question. Who's the number one lobbyist by far and away, spending more money buying and influencing Congress people and senators than any other entity in the country? Who's number one?
Can we say that name on TV? I don't know.
Who's number one?
I would bet.
Yeah, I know who you're thinking, Chad.
It's not.
And you're wrong.
It's not that one.
They're not even the top 20. Who's number one?
I don't know, but I would guess pharmaceutical companies.
No, they're part of it, but pharmaceutical companies are on some pharmaceutical companies are on the top 20. Of course, you have Raytheon and all of those who are also in the top 20, the top 10. Number one by far and away is the U.S. Chamber of Commerce.
Chamber of Commerce. Okay,
yeah. You know why? They represent the largest, biggest businesses, Fortune 500 companies in the country. And they are the ones who dictate to government what government is going to dictate to us. Every year, the president of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce has a State of American Business address. He gives it every year. He gives it a week before the State of the Union address. You know why he does that? Because the writers... Marching orders, exactly. Because the first time I noticed paid attention to Donald Trump's first State of the Union address, he almost took verbatim what the president of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce said in his State of American Business address, almost verbatim. And then if you go back and look at the other ones from the Obama administration and the Bush administration and the Clinton administration, they all do pretty much the same thing. So if you talk about oligarchs, let's give them a real solid name, a better image of who they are. They are the same corporations that we talk about all the time, forcing vaccines on us. People like Bill Gates, who's run certain major corporations, but Blackstone Group, Raytheon, we talked about, Citigroup.
Lockheed.
Who do you think stopped Brooksley Born back in 1998 when she wanted to regulate the derivatives that they used to crash the economy in 2008? That wasn't because poor people wanted to buy houses and all of a sudden they just couldn't buy a house. Yeah. That whole thing was orchestrated and crafted. It was designed. It was made. It was manufactured. It was made and manufactured by big business, banking, and of course, government, all working hand in glove together. And from one administration, the Clinton administration, to the Bush administration, for this thing to happen. It was devastating, obviously, as you guys recall. But it wasn't just government that did it to us.
No.
It was business working hand in glove with government. Now, let's talk about
with their friends in media too. Don't
with
forget
media.
them.
Yeah. They're compliant. If it wasn't for the media being as compliant as they are and being a puppet for these institutions and the government, then it wouldn't happen. It wouldn't happen. You go back to
they're a very helpful third leg of that stool.
Yeah, you go back to Murrow. Who was his name?
Edward R. Murrow.
Edward R. Murrow. Remember, he got McCarthy out. He got Senator Joseph McCarthy out. His work from television during his show, he got rid of Senator McCarthy. He was more powerful talking to the American people at their homes when they were coming home from work, sitting down, having dinner, and talking to them straight and being honest like we are right now. He was more powerful than Joe McCarthy was in the entire Red Scare. So you're right. Absolutely. The media is certainly part of this. But look at this. What's the main thing that we're opposed to now, or that's threatening us right now? Is it the COVID-19? Is it global warming? Or is it an organization that is pushing for massive change because of COVID-19, because of global warming? It's the World Economic Forum. Now, you ask, who is the World Economic Forum? Are they a bunch of socialists and left-leaning college? No. Go and have your people, you guys look it up as well. Have your people Google World Economic Forum partners. You can't get to their partners page from the front page of the World Economic website. But if you do this, World Economic Forum partners, it'll pull up a link to their partners page. Scroll down. The first thing you'll see are the A's. And there are about 100 major multinational corporations all signed up, starting with the letter A. Go to the B's. You got about 200. Go to the C's. You got about 150. Go to the D's. You're talking thousands of major multinational corporations. We're talking about Citigroup. Again, we're talking about Chinese companies. We're talking about Russian companies. We're talking about Indian companies. We're talking about companies all across the world. And they're all pushing this agenda to change the way we live, not just in terms of the economy, but everything in terms of the way we live. I think George Herbert Walker Bush once talked about this, and he talked about the New World Order. It's a really big idea. And that's exactly what this is. That's exactly what this is.
Absolutely. And I think this is one of those places where we can cross lines, where we can come to agreement, because, you're right. This isn't just government. Government has to be empowered by something. And in the modern day, what it is empowered by is, for one, we'll call a spade a spade. It's empowered by those bombs and guns it's got, but it's also empowered by major business and by banks. It is not just a fun saying to say that you can if you give a guy a gun, he can rob a bank. If you give a guy a bank, he can rob the world. And that is the bottom line. At the end of the day, these groups, whether you're talking about the Bilderberg Group or you're talking about, the Council on Foreign Relations or any other people that might get
hit all the hot buttons to try to get
So
shout out to Libre TV, by the way. Libre TV. Shout out to Saul. By the way, Scott, when we're done here, or maybe while we're on here, I got to talk to you about that. That was the thing way back when I told you, Saul is building his own platform, Libre TV, and we've been simulcasting there. So, at some point, if you want to, put some of your content there too, it's a great place to have a secondary, or even a mirror site or whatever. Yeah. It's a great because there's no censorship or anything there. The only thing is, no child porn, and you can't be putting hits out on people or anything like that. But other than that, say what you want to say, like that. It's, he's not trying to get.
I can't come on there smoking like crack and shooting up smack and say, I'll give you $50 to kill so and so. Here's his address. I can't do that. Come on.
You could probably come on there smoking crack, but I wouldn't say you're going to kill anybody.
Right.
I wouldn't do that. But no, but seriously, so that's man. Thanks, Marcus. Keep going. going. Keep going.
I gotta shout out Saul because I'm gonna be on his show tomorrow.
Oh,
so I'm gonna be talking about pagan symbolism with Saul.
You're spiking it.
Right.
Yeah.
So
go ahead,
so,
man.
yeah.
Finish your point. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I had to. It was a perfect point to bring up Libre TV.
No, and but you're right. You know that these groups, if you will, I think that I really like the Thomas Paine nobilities. These are the people that are the nobility. I think it's a better title for them because it covers the because it can even be religious organizations that are infested with all of this evil.
Sure. Yes.
And so it really is the new nobility, and they're trying to reconstruct that.
Well, look at who they pulled in back in. I don't mean to. I know you got to go to something else, Chad, but just to touch on that point you mentioned the religious organizations. Look who the Bush administration pulled in when they was pushed back in 2002 about they had messed up with the yellow cake from Niger thing, and they had tried to say that Iraq had worked with the terrorists from 9/11 when in fact they obviously didn't, and that fell apart. Right. Then they said there was don't let the smoking gun be a mushroom cloud, weapons of mass destruction. As all of these things started falling apart and their polling said, all of a sudden we're not so sure about going to war with Iraq, what did the Bush administration do? The Bush administration brought in the what?
The faith-based initiatives.
Right. They brought in and they started faith-based initiatives, and they brought in and they brought in leaders from these various mega churches and religious leaders from different denominations and different religions, and said, we're going to give you X amount of dollars. We're going to give you all this support. You just push in your congregation support for our war. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's also religious, the leaders of these religious organizations. You're right.
Yeah, well, all right. So real quick, because I want to move on to the other, because I do want to get into like how you kind of go about your process when you're putting your videos together, because I really appreciate like how you everything is sourced and you go through. But anyway, before we do that, I just wanted to like for me to tie this in kind of a little bow. I think what Marcus and I are talking about when we talk about this is more of like government as a protection racket for the oligarchs versus what, like, again, back to the thing I was saying, that if there was a government that was run by angelic beings who could not be corrupted by those big, because the reality of the matter is the United States is a big corporation. And when you incorporate your business, you are incorporating the government into your business and your business into the government, and they work together to have all these different things. And there's so many of the things. I think that regulation properly placed can be very good, but most of the time what I've seen with regulation is that the regulations that are actually put into place are put into place. The same lobbying groups are lobbying to have the regulations and the tax policy that makes it to where Exxon and Amazon and whoever else, all these, they all have their own ways of, like, they can afford the legal framework to be able to find their ways around that, and they actually help to write the language so that they can do that. And then
the startups can't. Yes.
And and if you're trying to do a startup, you can't even fucking come close to competing with that. If you don't have $1 million a year budget, you're not competing with them. And it's always funny to me to see, like, Jeff Bezos started Amazon in his garage, and I'm like, what's the real story about, like, how that motherfucker got to where he is? Because I'm guessing he wasn't just like some, $20K a year chemistry teacher who started selling books from his garage, and all of a sudden he's the most fucking wealthy man on the planet. That shit don't fucking happen.
Right. It doesn't work that way. Right.
Yeah. So anyway, so I want to get. We can come back to that later, but I don't want to, like, because I have like a little agenda that I did actually want to cover for everybody to be able to see. I want to hear, like, what are some of your favorite sources to go to, and, like, how do you go about that process of, like, putting your tabs together to where you know where you're going to go? Because I really appreciate how you take down these issues bit by bit, and it's really thorough, and it's really, really good to watch.
Well, thank you. First of all, I'll tell you the truth. There are some like alternative sites that I use, and I still check out and look at. There's still alternative small-time alternative writers that I follow. Like, I mean, obviously, I mentioned Michael Parente before. He's not small-time; he's certainly alternative. But like people like Stephen Lenman, people like Whitney Webb. I go to places like Global Research. I go to places like with Southfront. That's the one that does a bunch of stuff on overseas our incursions and our operations over there. But to be honest with you, I'll tell you a little insider secret. I mean, I've been doing this for quite a while. I'll tell you where I start. I start at the New York Times. I start at the Wall Street Journal. I start at Washington Post. And you know why? Because most people
get banned when you use their own sources.
No, trust me, I have been.
That's true. That's true.
Citing the Center for Disease Control and reading something straight from the Center for Disease Control.
You can't do that.
They kicked me off for 2 weeks. Right.
Still
depends on what you read.
Come on.
But I do that because most people will get their stuff from either an alternative site or YouTube or Jimmy Dore, or they'll watch Fox, or they'll watch CNN. They'll watch the processed food version of the news. Mm-hmm. But if you want to see what they're really up to, they'll tell you what they're really up to. It's on the back pages of things like New York Times, like the Wall Street Journal, like the Washington Post. If you flip a few pages and go back into those and look at them and read them, it's amazing the stuff they'll admit to doing every single day of the week. But nobody's paying attention. And they also know there's a code, like, doctors aren't going to snitch on other doctors. Lawyers aren't going to rat out other lawyers. The journalists at the CNN, MSNBC, they're not going to cover those stories from the Washington Post and the New York Times and all those things. So they can do that knowing their audience is pretty much going to be the kinds of people that are going to read this and agree with it. Well, not brain dead, smart. People who know what's going on with go to the World Economic website. I mean, hang on a second. Hang on a second. I'll show you what I'm talking about.
I got to say, I know that he's going to be back, but this has been a great conversation.
Yeah.
They know for a fact that no one's going to cover this. CNN's not going to go on and say, holy crap, look at this stuff he's doing. Look at this. Oh, my God, he's planning on this. They ain't gonna, but they'll tell you if you just know where to look. Someone once said, like their grandmother told them, be careful, listen to people. Because eventually, through all the bullshit and all the lies, they're going to tell you exactly who they are.
For sure. Somebody said once, and it might have been, I don't remember who it was, to be honest. I'm trying to put it together. But somebody said at one time that there's got to be something like in like the asshole rule book or something that says you got to tell people how you're ass fucking them or you can't do it. Because they do it all the time.
It's like I was watching last night. South Park was on, and they had the humanipede or whatever it was, where they have like the
human centipede, right,
the human centipede. That's it, the human centipede or centipad, the human centipad. It was an iPad that was like anyway. Like if you agreed to the terms and conditions, you were subject to all this stuff. Like they came and kidnapped you, glued your mouth to someone else's asshole, and then you had to eat the cuttlefish and asparagus anyway. Like that's what it reminded me of. It was like it's almost like there's that where it's like, no, look, we told y'all we were doing all this shit, and y'all still agreed to it, you dumb motherfuckers. And it brings me back to like in Behold a Pale Horse, where Bill Cooper there's one of those it's very early on, one of those documents that says that if we're too stupid to see the jokes, that we are stakes on the table and beasts of burden by choice and consent. And they actually believe that. They believe that if we like in Chicken Run, if we don't escape the cages, that we are volunteering to be slaughtered and eaten and have our eggs harvested. Yeah, that we deserve it.
Right.
Well, it comes back to what Dan Berman was talking about when he was on here with us, when he talked about that there is no law that says you have to pay income tax. No law, no federal law. But try not paying it.
Yeah. But that's again back to, he also brought up the thing about the incorporation, that once you create a corporation, now you have employees. And then that's when like the definition of person comes into play. Now those people who are persons can be taxed with income tax, and a normal everyday person selling oranges on the side of the road for cash is not subject to that same shit. Anyway, go ahead. Nico. What were you going to say?
No, I was seconding to the fact that law is so tricky amongst government and how they use it, and everything being basically a double entendre to a triple entendre to a quadruple entendre. It's like the same word but with so many different meanings, and it's it just plays into how we're tricked. Now, going back to the statement that I said that we're brain dead, I don't necessarily mean that, I take it back. Zombies aren't always stupid, because they know how to get to the brain. You feel me? It's like they even though I may see them as linear, they still get to the meat and potatoes at the end of the day, even if they have to run through it.
Not the ones on the Walking Dead. Those zombies are just the dumbest. Those are the dumbest zombies I've ever seen.
Only rivaled by the humans who don't hear them when they're going and dragging their feet through the leaves and everything. They're standing in the woods by themselves, and all of a sudden there's a zombie like grabbing their shoulder, like, you didn't hear that, motherfucker? What the fuck is wrong with you?
Clean your ears.
Too much adrenaline. No, I mean zombies by this. I'm captivated.
It was too good of a joke. Come on, Nico.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You know what? Let me not. But
listen, but you're absolutely right, Nico. I mean, when these people, I see them driving down the road. Why do they have a license? The windows are up. They're the only person in the vehicle. It's their vehicle, and they're wearing a mask.
Nico saw one with 2 masks a couple of weeks ago.
And then as soon as in his car with 2 masks. I told a story in one of my videos about this woman at the doctor's office. I'm not going to tell the whole story again, but I don't know if you saw it, but she was wearing the 2 masks. She was so worried about what she was touching. She had this thing of urine in her hand, and she had to put it in this, how if you do that in the bathroom, they got this metal wall cabinet. It's got doors on both sides, right? So you open your door, you put the urine in there, close it. She didn't want to touch the door. She acted like she wasn't smart enough to figure out. There was a big sign that says, "Open the door and put your damn urine in it." But she wasn't she wasn't able to figure that out. So she comes out and she gets the personal receptionist to get up and come walking around there, open the door for her, and then open the metal door for her because she didn't want to touch it because she was so afraid. So she puts her urine in there, and I can see because the door is still open. I'm sitting right there. I can't help but watch. And she doesn't want to touch it with her hand, and she looks and the other lady's gone. So she takes her elbow and goes, and it slams the metal door so hard, you can hear the fucking piss inside of it go splishing all over the inside of the container.
That's great.
Oh, shit, man.
And she looks around, she looks at me, and we had this moment, and she ends up leaving real quick before the person on the other side opens the thing and the piss comes pouring out onto the desk.
That's awesome.
That reminds me of this story.
And people are so scared.
Yeah.
People are so frightened,
Yeah.
And like you said, they're turning into zombies. If he told them, if Fauci said we need to wear 16 masks, you would see people walking around with these blue snouts. I swear to God.
No, for sure. Somebody said a long time ago, if he told people to wear a dildo on their forehead, they'd be doing it to ward it off. Like it's scared of dicks or something. I don't know. But my daughter was telling me about at the school that she goes to. They used to have this like button that you'd push to unlock the gate, like when one of those things that like at a public area or whatever, where there's like a dog park or something like that. You push a little button and it unlocks the gate, like demagnetizes it and it lets the gate open. Well, you can't touch that thing anymore, so they removed the button. Now there's a thing that you wave your hand in front of it, and it's like a motion sensor, and it like unlocks it, pulls the magnet, and then you still have to pull the gate.
Yeah.
So what the fuck's the point? Like, it's like your right hand is bad, your left hand is not. You know,
the use of the money that they've stolen had to go to somewhere.
No doubt.
Right.
For sure.
You gotta spend it on something.
No shit. Oh, and I heard somebody the other day, I was in Clubhouse and somebody was talking about how like that Pfizer has actually lost money from this thing. I was like, bro, you out your goddamn mind?
Right.
Are you out of your goddamn mind? Like,
listen, the government paid for the development of the vaccine. The government paid for the manufacturing of the vaccine, and now they're selling the vaccine back to the government and back to us.
Exactly.
How if you lose money in that deal, you're worse with money than I am.
You're worse with other people's money than you are.
And it ain't even about like what their last quarter's earnings were or anything like that. He's like, their stock is tanking. I'm like, that's just like, have you watched the stock market? Like PE ratios don't even mean anything anymore. Like somebody will, I remember Amazon, and apparently the people were right. Amazon and Netflix. I remember back in like the 2009, 2010 era, I was looking at those and I was being like, I don't understand. They don't have earnings. They have negative earnings, and they're, it's like $270 for a share of Netflix. Why the fuck would I buy that? And then, next thing you know, you look up, it's like split multiple times, and then the share price is higher than it is.
I got a simple answer to that dude who told you that. Yeah, GameStop's.
Yeah, exactly.
Stuff tanked as well, but it tanked for a totally different reason. It wasn't because they were losing money or going out of business. It was because someone made it tank.
Right. And then they made it untank, and then it tanked again. And actually, it was up today after hours, and they, I think, AMC. They're apparently, I don't know if it's the Wall Street Bets people or what, but they ran it up again after hours today. So I guess back to that thing. So I think by and large, I think we're kind of on the same page. Mm-hmm. We might just have like a different. Like Marcus and I want to live, and Nico to a certain extent too. Nico, I don't know if you know this history, but like Nico came to us in kind of an interesting way. Nico came to us via like the spiritual route. Yeah, the spiritual route. And we still talk a lot about like political stuff because the name of the show is Aquarian Anarchy. So like half of it is that like I don't know.
They just basically teach me
spiritual and astrological stuff, and then and so Nico has.
Man, you teach us too every damn time.
Totally. Look, it's, go ahead.
But where we kind of approach this from is that the stuff being voluntary is more of our concern than of whether or not there's whether it's some sort of like Consumer Reports or competing different firms that are like Consumer Reports as a form of regulation. I look at like the video game industry as a good indication of this. There's not like a regulatory board that says what types of video games you have to make it to where people actually enjoy them. It's the people shitting on bad games and people pumping up good games that makes it to where you get more good games. And when there's a shitty one like Cyberpunk, everybody shits on it, and they get that consumer pressure.
This is again your invisible hand idea, and that's well and good, and that does work to some degree. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, the invisible hand only works as well as people can communicate and as people can understand. And like you said, it was the video game players, it was the game community that exposed what was wrong with Cyberpunk. They weren't ready. They shouldn't have come out. Right. But the reality was business interests told them, you got to get this thing out. You've already put this thing off for 3 years. People are mad. People are buying, have bought your game. You got to put something out. And so they were forced to rush to put out a product that wasn't finished yet. At least it wasn't finished on the consoles. It was finished in the computer PC side, but it wasn't finished in the consoles. Mm-hmm. And so they got punished for that. And you're right. The invisible hand in that case did work. But I want to point something out to you as well. You mentioned before that you would be all into it if you had these angelic people who you could put in place. We just discussed one, and that was Cynthia McKinney. I'm not going to say she was angelic. Everyone's got problems, but she at least was there for the right reasons.
Mm-hmm.
You said in your thing to me before that you sent me on DMs what the solutions would be. One of the solutions is very simple, and it's called democracy. We don't have it now, but there's a way to get it back. And I've said this multiple times, and I've been writing about this, and it's very simple. It's three things: paper, pencil, plexiglass. Get rid of electronic voting machines. Most civilized, westernized countries, industrialized countries that we do business with, that are in line with us, in line with our central banking system, they don't use electronic voting machines. They won't touch them. Because the best way to fix our government is through representative that represent us. Whether you're populist, whether you're on the left, or whether you're on the right, it doesn't matter. The best way to do that is to get plexiglass boxes, pens, paper, put the thing in the plexiglass boxes, cameras watching the counting as it takes place in real time, broadcast live on the internet. Everybody can see it. Everybody can verify it.
Go back and scroll through it if you need to.
Let the people decide, because I guarantee you this, as much as I said before that we aren't quite the same country we were in 1988 as we are now, at least on the terms of the Democratic Party isn't, we are still one of the greatest countries on the planet. And the people, I think, are some of the best people on the planet. And if we put them back in charge of the people, by the people, and for the people, if we put them back in charge and we get rid of the lobbyists and we get rid of the special interest groups and the moneyed interest in our government, and we put the people in government, in state, local, and federal levels who represent us and just us, and that's it, and they do their jobs and then they leave, then this country will change, almost overnight. That's my opinion. Now, you'll never be able to get that and convince him of that, because what's his face now from the pillow company is going to be sued for $1 billion for just mentioning the fact that one of these companies might be nefarious. Oh my God, they got to shut him up. But if we can get back to that, if we could look at the fact that all these countries that we respect and we do business with and are in part of this whole central bank system, not crazy countries like Venezuela or whatever, but our allies. They don't use these machines. There's a very, very, very good reason why they don't.
Now, I'm going to not debate because I can, but I'm not going to. And the reason I'm not going to is because I'll take a minarchist government. I'll take that. I will definitely side with, if we can go back to the Constitution, okay, sign me up. I'm on board, because I think that's a step in the right direction from where we're at right now. But I will take your idea and take it one step farther. Why couldn't we do that on the blockchain?
Anything that you have that's going to be involving electronic transmission, anything is hackable. Anything is not only hackable, but like as in the main problem with the system that we have now is it's not necessarily that it was hacked, but it was written in such a way that it was not necessarily honest.
Yeah.
You will have people like that. Here's the thing. There's no possible. I agree the blockchain is a possibility, but you have to have people in charge of it who know, and then other people will want to find a way into it, and there's too many ways to do that. What I'm saying is maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, but I'll tell you one thing. You're not going to hack a piece of paper in a plexiglass box with cameras watching it at all times. You're not going to be able to hack that. There's no way to hack it. Which is why it's used by so many countries out there.
I'm going to grant you. Do you know a lot about blockchain?
No.
Okay. One of the things that is key to blockchain technology is, one, it's completely visible. You can see every single transaction. Everything that happens is absolutely visible to anyone that wants to follow it down.
Anybody who can.
Yeah.
Anybody who can.
Yeah, I think
Right.
that's the point that Scott's making. Is that, like the video
I
thing.
don't
The
know
only
if Nico might be able to. You might have that background, Nico. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't have that background.
Maybe
Nor do I
you
have
do,
a computer. Yeah,
And it's also not only is it public, you can get it. I will grant you that it's not as easy to get at as a piece of paper. I grant you that, but we're talking about millions and millions of people, and having a camera at that's cost. My brain goes to money. You're going to have cost at every single one to have the camera system, to have the people counting, to have all the stuff that's going to do that. And I will grant you that the electronic voting machines are probably more expensive, but what I'm saying is with blockchain, you could get to what you're talking about and be able to be cost efficient and be able to see it and be able to use blockchain technology so you can go back. If it's hacked, you will see that it was hacked because it's on the blockchain, because it's all public.
Okay, now here's one thing to counter that. The same thing holds true. If I'm a programmer and I know how to write code and I have the access to the memory cards, now we're really going to get shut down by YouTube. And I have access to the memory cards, I can take that code out from the memory card and I can read it and I can see exactly how it's going to count the votes. The problem is it's proprietary. It's business. It's a business, and but I don't know that.
Blockchain is not the blockchain.
Yeah, everybody who has Bitcoin has the entire ledger at their disposal. Yeah, so you can all see it. That's one of the good things. That's actually one of the things. Now, I do think there are some there's some
that I'm not aware of.
Yeah, there are some potential
to be exploited or used at that point. Right. However, I think in terms of my Neanderthal brain, I can wrap my head around paper, plastic, and plexiglass.
Now, the only thing I would say to that though is that I saw not the net. What was it? It was Speed, and I saw what Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock did with that camera, and they made Dennis Hopper think that they were still driving that bus for that whole time, and they weren't unloading all the passengers off of there. So there's ways to act.
You got me there. I didn't take into consideration the speed contingency. You got me there. Tosses the whole thing out the window. It's fucking Speed. God damn. It would be Keanu Reeves who fucks it all up. For
sure. And don't forget when Adam went and visited him.
But no, I would like to probe that idea, because all right, so Marcus and I have we have our own world, and rather than attempt to convince you of our worldview or anything like that, I want to probe a little bit more about so what you're talking about is more of a better, more representative form of what we have lost, I guess, along the way, and a return to something that's more truly representative, where the people actually have a voice. Do you think that if you had something that was more both literally and figuratively transparent, because of the plexiglass, do you think that would start to get people to have a little more of a feeling like they need to take a little bit more ownership of it?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So that's where I thought you were going with it. That I think that there are enough people who are disillusioned by the bullshit. That they're just like, fuck this. It doesn't matter.
What is Congress's rating right now? The Congress just started.
Exactly.
Congress just started. What is their rating? 15.
Yeah. Right.
Approval rating. Yeah. And that's an improvement from the last Congress.
Like 9%.
That was 9. Right. The last one was 9%, and now we're at 15. And you're right. There is a built-in cynicism right now in politics in this country, and with very good reason.
Absolutely.
With very good reason. I understand why this anarchy thing has taken off and done so well, because listen, something's got to be better than what we've got going on right now. And it's the question is it so broken that it can't be fixed? And
I would agree.
If you ask for the other part of my solution, other than plexiglass, paper, and pens, the other solution is we put 5, 10, 15 million people in the streets in DC, and we stay until they all leave, and then we reconstruct it. Then we remake it.
So two things real quick. The first is very quick. I think that one of the issues that we have is that even the primary process, the candidates that were offered, it's like there's this, all right, even if you got to choose, you get to choose one of these, 20 people or something like that.
Right.
So we lose a certain level of control even there, because the media is going to promote who they're going to promote. They're going to dunk who they're going to dunk. They're going to do their hit pieces on whoever they're going to do their hit pieces on, and all that kind of shit. So you're left with that. The second part of what I was going to say is, from the standpoint of that kind of direct democracy almost, but more of like a representative democracy that's more transparent. The difference I see with that instilling a different level of like ownership is, what's the difference between that and us asserting our own self-ownership and starting to really take more responsibility for ourselves, our families, our local communities. And then the more you kind of branch out, you start to lose a level of control, because we don't need to have somebody in Washington, D.C. telling people in Idaho and Miami what to do.
I get that. I understand that. And I agree with you. And obviously I'm going to be in a long line that says no slavery. I'm not going to be a slave.
Yeah.
I get all that. I get taking ownership of your own situation. I get fixing the problems, the small scale problems, local community in your neighborhood. I did a video the other day where I walked a duck rather than turn my back on it and let it fucking die and get eaten by the cats. Yeah. But I do that with helping my neighbor with the lawn. I do that in every way, shape, and form that I can, that I'm capable of. But here's the problem. You do that all you want, and you live in that nice little community. Those fuckers are still out there. They're still running a country. And whether you like it or not, your little happy place is in that country. Yeah, exactly. Is in that country. And it's going to get worse. And what they're doing, if we don't stop them, if we don't get out in the street, if we don't say we've got to look at the bigger picture, we got to look at the meta. You can look at the macro and the micro all you want, but if you don't look at the bigger picture, these guys are going to continue pushing what they're doing. These guys are going to continue pushing what they're doing down our throats, to the point where it won't matter if you put 5 million people in the street.
No, I have this kind of discussion with my wife a lot, because she's there are a lot of people in the midst of all this stuff, and there's been people in this kind of group for a long time, but I think it's ramped up considerably in the last 12 months. There are people who are looking for, like, where do we go? Where do we escape to? And my take on that is, fuck escaping to anywhere, because all you're doing at that point is you're all collecting yourselves in some corner where then they just come and they're like, nuke that fucking corner, and then we're done with those people. And I'm like, no, I'm gonna stand my ground. I'm gonna fight it here, because I don't know what else to do. Like I don't think that escaping to some little enclave somewhere is what's in the best interest of my kids, my grandkids, and my great grandkids. Right. Like, at some point, somebody has to stand their sacred ground and say, no more. You're not, to quote, what the fuck's that movie? I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. But we got to do more than, Network. That's it. I was like, Newsroom. No, it's not Newsroom. My old TV days are coming back, but yeah, like we have to do more than that, though. We can't just stand out our window and yell something to the oblivion and expect shit to change. We've got to do more than that. But I do think, and that's why I appreciate what you do. That's why I wanted to bring you on, was because part of what we are doing, this show, your show, and so many of the other shows that we follow, that we kind of like cross-pollinate with and everything, is people need to be awakened, because to the extent that whether it's your solution or our solution or any of the other potential solutions that are out there that get us a step closer to freedom, they don't happen if people aren't made aware of A, how they're getting fucked, and B, how they can unfuck themselves. And that's one of the things I really appreciate about getting to have this forum and this audience with you, and bringing our audiences together.
And see the fucking that they're going to get in the future. And the fucking
that's
get in the future. If you're not going to do it, if you're not going to have the courage to stand up for yourself, For God's sake, stand up for the next generation.
For sure.
You don't. Somebody wrote eons ago. You don't have the luxury of picking your wars. They're chosen for you, and by luck of birth, you're born into them. This is ours, and either we're going to stand up for it, and we're going to fight for it, and we're going to resist it, or we're going to roll over. We're going to stand in that short line where it says, "I'll be a slave."
Right.
Right.
For sure. And that's why you're an ally. Whether or not we agree with everything that you say, or you agree with everything we say, at the end of the day, when we're on the firing line, we're beside each other. We're behind the bushes together. We are making that stand together. And it's going to take people with different ideas. Let's say Chad and Nico and I get what we want. We get our Hotep and Build, society where we've got our communities organized and all that. We get that. You know what? We're going to need people like you giving us ideas to build on, because we don't have all the solutions. I've said it before. I don't know everything, and I don't even want to know everything.
Some scary shit out there,
right? I don't want that shit.
Some of it comes from the top left corner of the screen. God damn it!
Right. So I don't want some of that shit, and I need allies. And Murray Rothbard talked about the Freedom Train, and he said, maybe this Freedom Train goes 100 miles, and maybe I'm on that Freedom Train 100 miles, and it is the stupidest thing in the world for people that want to get on that Freedom Train and ride it 99% of the way to 99 miles for us to be like, fuck you. That's stupid. That is, and won't get you to the end of the train ride.
Yeah. No, and it's go ahead, Nico.
No, I was just co-signing.
You just co-signing. Okay.
Yeah, no, I was just co-signing on what Marcus said. At the end of the day, it's like people have to really step back and lose. And this is how I view it. You have to lose your ego for you to really get a very basic understanding of the masses. Everybody is important, but you're not shit. You're not that important. You're a part of a cog that works on a much bigger system. So, if you have these certain views, and it's so funny, I say this all the time, it's like we all argue and fight for the same cause as freedom. So it's like, okay, well, take your foot out your ass and view it from my point, and I'll take my head out my ass and I'll view it from your point. And therefore, we can actually see things on an even level instead of always assuming what my information source is right and yours is wrong.
Right.
So therefore, the discourse between us, the dialogue between us is just irrelevant at this point, because nobody's going to learn anything. So the biggest thing is just taking your ego out and viewing a situation for what it truly is instead of what you think it is.
You made a very good point, Nico, and that is that we are all just small little cogs in this, and we're all going to play a role. And the reason I say that is because when you look back over the history of how this is developed, if you understand what this new normal is, it hasn't just come to being since COVID-19. This is something that had a different name, and it went by a different name for many, many, many generations to come. These people live their entire lives. These are wealthy, well-educated people, and they have played their role in moving this agenda forward. Just like you said, Nika, we have to learn from them. They understand that this is a long-term project. These people don't think in terms of a year. These people don't think in terms of the next paycheck. These people think in terms of the next generation.
100 years, 50, 100 years.
100 years, 50 years, right. And so what you said, Nico, makes perfect sense. We have to understand that each one of us has a small role to play. I ran a small website. They wiped it out. I had another YouTube channel. They wiped it out. I keep doing what little bit that I can do to help bring awareness. Everything that I do came from one woman who had the courage to say something to me about 9/11 a long time ago that ended our friendship. She had one role to play. And from what she did,
Yeah.
Everything that I have done ever since, and all the people that I have helped influence and helped at least make them think, I wouldn't be here now if it wasn't for Jessica, if it wasn't for that one person playing that one role. Yeah, that's how it works. That's how it snowballs and goes down. So
you never know what seeds you plant.
Nico. Thank you.
Yeah. Chad and I's job and Nico's job too is to scare the living shit out of the state so that they give you what you want, Scott. Don't give in to the anarchists.
All right, give me what I want to. I'm calling the anarchists.
Yeah, right.
Right.
All right, so if I may, let me let's, since we're running out of time here, I don't want to keep Scott too long, and I know Marcus and I and I think Nico also, we all have to go back to work in the morning, but so we talked about like this generational sort of outlook on things, and you also talked about like stopping what's coming for your kids, your grandkids, your great grandkids, those types of things, the next generation and the generation after. Nico's 22. He's already, we're already talking to the next generation, and he's got a generation behind him that he's living with. He's got little brothers and sisters and stuff like that are that he's helping to raise. So what are your main concerns that we need to be on the lookout for going forward for the next 10, 20, 30 years?
I got 3 minutes to wrap this up.
No, you got as long. You got
time. The biggest ones, we got to get the biggest concern that I have. One of the biggest concerns that I have is that people are going to be so institutionalized. Why do they call it lockdown? Lockdown is a prison term. The masks. There was look up Pendleton Prison images from 1856, 1857. They used to make these prisoners wear these they're called hat masks. It was a stocking cap with a mask, and the mask had little holes, and it covered their face, not because of viruses, but because depersonalization. Fauci was talking the other day, as the numbers are going down, and as I talked about, not only the New York Times, but also the Wall Street Journal talking about, we could have total immunity by April, depending. Both of them said different reasons, but we could have it by April. Immunity.
We still need a passport.
He said we still need double masking all the way through 2022. Yeah. What is this about? This is about dividing us, not just in terms of left versus right, black versus white, Christian versus atheist or Jew, or Jews versus everybody, or whatever the hell it is. But this isn't about just doing that. This is about dividing us person to person to person.
Yes. Yeah.
This is about isolating us.
Yeah.
This is about what they did to the prison system when they privatized it, and also before they privatized it. Isolation is the worst thing you can do to a human being. It's the worst.
Look at the suicide rates and the mental health decline.
Right. Not just older people and people who are out of work, but also young people. People suicides now in this country and in UK. We have a good
Scotland. Friend. Yeah, we have a good friend who has a friend who his 12-year-old their 12-year-old son committed suicide like last week.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, it is
so terrible, and to children especially. What they're doing with this, shutting down schools. What was it? Scotland? I think it was Scotland. They never shut down the schools. They said, no, we're not going to do that. They did it for like a month at the end of the last school year, but then they've been open ever since. And know what their infection totals were? 16 students throughout the whole state, the whole country. 16. Wow. I'm pretty sure it was Scotland. 16, and that was it. What they're doing to kids is criminal. It's absolutely criminal. For sure. What we need to take it to pay attention to is not only that, not only what they're doing with the Great Reset, not only what they're doing with the Fourth Industrial Revolution, not only what they're doing economically to us and socially to us, but the idea that one thing that we don't have, if we had a good elected set of officials that only cared about us and they were actually ours, represented what we wanted, that would be all great. But the one thing that we really miss, aside from the crappy media that we have now, is accountability. There is no accountability for our leadership. And a prime example of that is Andrew Cuomo. Everyone's pissed off because he lied about he killed 15,000 as opposed to 9,000. Oh my God, he lied about how many people he killed.
Like, no, fucking he killed
kill one and see what happens. Kill one and see what happens.
Right. No, that's one of the things Murray Rothbard talks about. Yeah, Murray Rothbard talks about that in Anatomy of the State, where he says you can tell like where and this is, again, back to like the thing about with government, like you can tell where government's like concerns are. And so let's just talk about the current inculcation or whatever of government that we have now. All right. Their concern is clearly with protecting themselves at the expense of everyone else. Because if, like you said, if you or I killed one person and, oh my gosh, God forbid, one of those family members that lost someone because of Andrew Cuomo, or maybe lost two parents.
Right.
If they took out Andrew Cuomo, under the jail. Right. Now, is Andrew Cuomo going to go to jail for this? Hell no, he's not going to go to jail for this.
He'll get an award of some kind.
Absolutely. He'll probably get a medal hung around his
another
neck.
Emmy.
Another
Emmy.
Another Emmy. Yes. God damn, man. And his brother's the one on TV. Like, what the fuck?
You know that guy that he threatened, right? He threatened some dude on when he was bathing his kids, and he called him up. Andrew Cuomo did, and told this guy, "You better get your mind right and help us out, or I can ruin you."
Yeah.
One of his parents died in a nursing home from COVID, right?
No, I did not know that.
Did you know that?
Holy shit! No.
One of his parents died in a nursing home in New York State from COVID-19 after he signed the thing and sent those people in for those 3 or 4 months that he did it. I mean, could you imagine? And you're right. Listen, accountability. If there's no accountability, none whatsoever, then people will get away with anything. Certain people will get away with anything. And not only will they get away with anything, but they will plan on being able to get away with it because they have in the past. And so they'll do worse things. So in the future, things that we need to focus on, obviously elections, obviously coming together, getting rid of the corporate merger with the state. Corporations are fine, state is fine, but once they come together, that's the F word, that's fascism. At least Mussolini said that. But then really the biggest thing we can do is there has to be accountability. If there's no accountability, we are done for.
Yeah.
And that's on us. Like, we've got to be the ones holding them accountable. If we're not holding them accountable, no one else is going to.
Yeah, and it comes back to what Spooner talked about in No Treason. He talked about that the only difference between the state and a band of burglars is that the band of burglars has the common decency to actually stab you in the back themselves. They don't pay somebody to do it.
And with that, Nico, you got anything you want to add before we?
Hey, all I gotta say is, as long as we are being proper cogs in this gear and not gerbils on the motherfucking wheel, and not let the outside, because I can honestly say for the past like month and a half, if not 2 months, I've been more reserved, and I find out Tiger Woods gets in an accident, but the real shit behind it is that the Fed just went down. So it's like the fact that I'm not paying attention to this and not keeping up to it is a problem, not just for me and myself, but it's a danger to everybody else, because I found this out through a different channel that was getting their information from places that aren't even in America. They get their news information from places that aren't in America because of the censorship and the things that are happening. So it's all our parts to do the due diligence in keeping up with this bullshit charade show that is called our government. because at the end of the day, they know what's going to happen. We're just finding out. We're just finding out whatever they want to drop.
No
so
joke.
It genuinely is up to us to stay consistent with not just the podcast that we watch, but to give out and divulge information and give your 2 cents, because at the end of the day, even the homeless man got gems to drop for you. Yeah. So it's all about paying attention and being
like receptive.
Discerning. Yeah, discerning and receptive of the information that is all given and taken. So just be better, America, and whoever listens to this.
Right.
No joke.
I still say that the end of the day, what gets us through this is being the smiling faces of freedom. We need to be friendly, be compassionate, and be loving. And that's what brings people our direction. And I'm proud, frankly, Scott, to have had this moment to talk to you and find out that we don't have that many differences. And the differences we have are just nuance. And
we're a long way from having to worry about those differences because we got a whole bunch of other fish to fry before we get there.
Sure. We'll have plenty of time to hash out these differences when we're in Ocasio-Cortez's re-education camp. So
I was going to say this is either the
and we're all going. Don't act like I'm not going. I'll be there.
This is either the conversation we're having while we're playing spades or hearts or whatever at the concentration camp.
I think it's called Tunk. When you go inside, it's called Tunk.
Oh, okay. I don't know. I've never been. So, but no, it's either that or it's the dessert that we have after we have the main, 6 courses of getting to freedom. Which God, I hope that's what we have served up is that instead of the concentration camps. But I don't know. We may have to go through one to get to the other because we are definitely in the good times have created soft men, and soft men are getting fucking railroaded right now. Jesus, it's rough. Yeah. Well, if you enjoyed this show, right. Thank you, Nico. If you enjoyed this show, don't forget to like, to share, to subscribe, to go to our Patreon, become a patron. Throw us a little cheddar, so that it's not all going to the oligarchs.
Scott,
and go. Yeah, Scott's links are in our description. So go there, find him. If you came to this conversation through us, make sure you go and give Scott some love too, because he puts out great content. You put out, like, I don't know, a couple 3 videos a day, damn near, it seems like. Sometimes more, sometimes less, but it's always good content, always compelling, and I like I said way back when I promoted you on Twitter, I don't care if this is like exactly like my mindset 100% all the way. Like it's your voice needs to be amplified. You need to be heard. This has been a great conversation, and we appreciate everybody coming in. Appreciate the folks who you brought. I know there was a little bit of a contentious moment or 300 in the chat. Hope y'all can come to love each other and learn from each other. Wait
a minute. Is that Aunt BB? Is she being contentious again?
Yeah. Well, and we had our own
sketch therapy.
Aunt BB and sketch. We're going at it.
Hey, it's all about love.
It's all love.
We're
it's all
fighting
love
for
over
the
here.
same cause.
It's all love here.
We're fighting for the same cause.
Trying to bring everybody together.
Guns.
That's right. But no, we really appreciate you, Scott, and appreciate everything you do, and appreciate you coming on. And we hope I hope we can do this again down the line, because this is a great conversation, and I think we were only scratched the surface, to be honest. So,
well, if I could just quickly say, I would love to. I'll set up something, and maybe you can talk to me into showing me how to do this. I've never done a live stream on YouTube. Oh yeah. And if I can set that up, I'd be glad to have you guys come on my thing. We'll do the whole thing again. And somebody else gets to sit in the a-hole square.
Hey, one more time. Let's shout out to Beau before we go. We got to say hi to Beau. Where's Beau? Where's Beau? We got to get our Beau moment before the episode.
Our Beau grifty.
Yeah,
Beau, come here, Grift. Right. Help me out. Who's the Beau grift? Beau, get up here. Okay, he's got the toy. Hang on a second. Here he comes.
Hey, by the way, I saw what you were talking about. Like, our dog does exactly the same thing. That's awesome. Well, hey, Beau, we love you, man.
Say hi. Say hi.
Hey, there you go.
Right, my
Man, I
microphone.
appreciate it. I love it. I love it. No, but my dogs do the same thing. They'll tear the stuffing out of every damn toy you give them. My daughter's dog, he will eat the stuffing out of his bed when people come over or something like that.
Yeah.
He'll just tear the bed to shreds just to be like, why are these fucking people here? I'm gonna eat my bed. I'm like, all right, man, go do your thing. It's not gonna be very comfortable when you go to sleep in it later.
It makes perfect sense to the dog at the moment.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that's right. That's right. All right. Well, we appreciate you coming on again, and look forward to talking with you in the future. And also you, Beau. We love you too. And thanks for everybody in the chat for coming in and showing love. We appreciate you guys. And with that, we will say, what do you say, Marcus?
Stay free.
Indeed.